So good morning to everybody. Welcome to this event today. As PwC, we are pleased to host in conjunction with Real Asset Media and also together with our colleagues from PwC Germany. It has been for us a great occasion for bring different people together to speak about the different market, the Italian one and the German one, in order that we can increase the relationship among the two different territories. I'm going to give a quick overview about the Italian market, and I am providing you with some figures that are mainly discussed across our market, and some of you are providing on a regular basis those data and statistics, and so I thank the people that are today in the Zoom because they are providing data and they are helping to make the Italian market more transparent than in the past. A quick overview about Italy, about the country profile, because I think that it is true that we are speaking about real estate, but we need to remember that we are in a specific country. Specific country that I would say is characterized by the fact that we are a very poor fertility rate. In terms of the growth of the population, as you can see, there is basically no growth. And it is something that we need to consider also in the real estate space, because effectively buildings are made for people. So it is something that is very interesting. In terms of area and population density, it is something which is not changing from one year to another. But I think it is it could give a flavor about how the Italian territories is built across all the peninsula. As you can see, there is a lot of exports across towards European Union. We have also some exports towards US that I think is more or less about food, because we are exporting a lot of, cheese, etc., to the US market and etc. And of course, it is true that we are a manufacturer countries. But services are tertiary segment sectors are obviously very important. As concerns the Italian main economics driver, you can see that there is a trend, a reported analysis that we made showing what happened since 2016 and what are the expectations for the closing of this year and also for 2020. It seems that from a certain point of view, it is a very stable environment. It is true that the GDP for this year is not so brilliant, but we expect a slight recovery for 2020. We will see what is going to happen, because effectively it is true that, as Thomas reported, instability is one of the main concerns, not only for Italy, but I would say globally, because effectively it's not clear what would be the direction for the next year. The Italian real estate market. I put a picture of the Bosco Verticale because, of course, for us it's an iconic building, very new. In terms of these are the numbers. So these are the numbers of transaction. On the left, you can see residential, and on the right, non-residential transactions. What is important to note is the fact that, as concerned residential, we can see that there is a constant growth, and also the expectation for this year is that there will be an increase of 2% in terms of transaction occurred in the residential area. It is something that Nomisma presented yesterday. And while on the other side, we can see that I would say there has been a sort of reshuffle in terms of composition on what are the investment and the sectors in which there are the investment. And it's something that I can confirm, especially for 2019, because so far the transaction has been 7.2 billion. in terms of volumes. And we expect that by year end, the transaction will be about 10 billion. So for the Italian market, it's something which is brilliant, I have to say. And also last quarter was very interesting because we had 2.2 billion of transactions. In terms of the mix, there has been a change because effectively, as you can see, the offices have been in the past, I would say, the main asset class followed by retail. This year, we can see that hotels are in a very, very good place. This is probably due to the fact that there has been a huge, a very important transaction on the market from a French investor. But it is true that it is becoming more and more an interesting asset class. The trend in terms of investor type, but in terms of residential, Italian investor and foreign investors. What struck me is the fact that after 2012, there have been a switch. And so also for this year, we are seeing that most part of the investment in our residential sector is from foreign investors. And so far, 84%, more or less, it's always depending how you are making, how you are determining these statistics, is made by foreign investors. So the question is where are Italian investors? So where are they now? But the real point is that effectively most part of this investment in Italy are performed by the sector. I'm going to go through the different sectors. So offices are still very interesting. They account for 2.3 billion in terms of total volume. It is true that Milano continue to be the leading is continuing leading the Italian market, and it accounts for 65% of the total volume. There are also, of course, different transactions occur which happen in Rome, and I think this is a positive news. Quality is one of the drivers of the office. Effectively, this is a common theme. It's not only for Italy, but it is common, I would say, worldwide, because more and more companies are seeing that the real estate is not only the place where you live, but it is something that can influence also your organization, how you are innovating within your workplace. It is a matter of attractivity for talent people and etc. And so you need to have flexible spaces. Your spaces have to be inclusive, and of course digital is something on which you have to work more and more in terms of having, let's say, the right set of your workplace as a concern the fact of using digital technologies, and also for having your people to upskill their own capabilities from a digital perspective. Hotel, generally speaking, the total volume of transactions were around 2.3 billion, so this year it was something very similar to the office one. It is true that last year report, as concerned Italy, there was a sentiment about the fact that hotel would have been more interesting for most investors, and effectively we had the confirmation. We expect also for the future that there will be some additional interest due to the Olympic Games that are going to occur in 20. And it will impact not only, let's say, the closer area of Milano, but also Cortina, Valtellina, and etc. Retail. Retail, I have to say, is always on the radar. It is part, of course, of a transaction. It is true that we had in Milano the requalification of Piazza Cordusio. I think that it was something very, very positive. There is a good sentiment concern High Street, and then there is a big question mark about what is going to happen for the shopping center, but probably it is something that we can discuss later. Logistic, as confirmed also by Thomas, is something which is very interesting also as concern the yields that are very good where compared to the other. When we started some years ago, a long time ago, with our interview for preparing the emerging trend in real estate report, all the investors, especially in Italy, were not interested at all at the residential sector. Now the mood is completely different because they are considering residential not necessarily in terms of home and in terms of home, but residential in all the different aspects, for example, student housing, senior living, etc. So different point of view. It's not really residential, but it is a proper asset class. A quick highlights about the city. I'm always uncomfortable about the fact that when we look at Italy, we're only speaking about two main cities, and we're not looking at the other cities. It is true that Milano and Rome represent more than half of the total investment. So this is one of the reasons why we're always speaking about the cities. But it is also true that it's quite difficult for international investors to look at smaller, mid-tier, second-tier cities. And so the cities that are attracting more capital are always Milano and Rome. There is a good news in the VCR report in the Emerging Trend 2020, because Milano and Rome has changed their position. So Milano last year was 20th, and this year it is 11th. So there has been a huge increase in terms of from the investor. And also I have to say there is a slight surprise as concern Rome, which moved from the 26th position to the 22nd. In terms of what is reported in the market, I think that one of the more significant comments that we had in the report is the fact that one of the interviewees told that Milan has a different market compared to other cities in Italy, and effectively it is playing, let's say, the European League. It means that it is a place which is in the radar screen of the investor. And probably it is perceived as a city who is living, let's say, a golden age, and we hope this is something that is going to continue, but effectively also in terms of investing, from the point of view of the investor, it is something that we can confirm. These are the return that I wanted to show, but also in terms of transaction, because I think that if we want to play effectively in the European League, we need to take into account also what happens in terms of transaction. So I have to say, if I look at, for example, at the volume of transaction in London, they are completely different in terms of volume. So it is true that there is a different dimension of the city, but effectively it is something to take into consideration. Rome, I have to say that the prospects for Rome are not so bad as I thought. It means that some responded told that Rome is like Milano in 2015. So I expect that something is going to happen also on Rome, and that there are some opportunities for the city, and I think that it is quite a good prospect. Also in this case, I reported the transaction and the property return. I am ending. I wanted to remember to everybody that when we speak about real estate, we have to remember that we are speaking about houses, offices, and etc. So something which is built for the human being. So we need to remember that real estate, it is not only something on which you need to invest, so you can gain some something you can have some return, but it is basically something that needs to be built for human beings.